I always knew my life would end in disgrace someday, but I didn't expect it to happen in the middle of a ballroom glittering with golden chandeliers and with a drunk bartender in a sequined shirt. That thought was the only thing keeping me sane as I stood on the marble floor, suffocating, in the scent of too much perfume and the heavy gaze of too many expectant eyes. Aristocrats dressed in silk and velvet whispered behind fans, pretending they weren't watching me like a prized bull about to be auctioned off. The orchestra swelled with a triumphant tune that made my skin crawl. I tugged at the cuffs of my tailored jacket. Perfect lines, perfect knot on my tie, perfect posture. I was the ideal alpha son of the Von Aster family, or so everyone believed. Inside, I was anything but perfect. Inside, I wanted to rip the tie off, steal a bottle of whiskey from the refreshment table, and set fire to the ridiculous velvet drapes. Stand tall, my mother's voice echoed in my head. Our name rests on your shoulders. Choose wisely. Mark with dignity, as if this whole farce had anything to do with dignity. The so-called marking ceremony was an outdated tradition dressed up as sacred. A room full of carefully selected Omegas paraded in gowns and jewels, waiting to be chosen by an alpha of standing. Bloodlines, alliances, social ranking, all on display, wrapped in lace and expectations. I'd resisted it for years, but tonight, I'd run out of excuses. My family had cornered me. I exhaled slowly and tried not to look like I wanted to bolt for the exit. That's when I noticed him. At the far end of the ballroom, by the bar, stood a man who absolutely did not belong here. His shirt was a blinding shade of blue with silver sequins that caught every glimmer of chandelier light, turning him into a walking disco ball. His hair was tousled, his grin reckless, and his glass was never empty. He leaned over the counter, flirting shamelessly with one of the servers, and laughed so loudly that 3 matrons nearly fainted. I stared, not because he was particularly handsome, though he was, but because he looked like freedom in human form. He didn't care about rules or reputation. He didn't even care that his presence was clearly unauthorized. Who the hell invited him? Someone hissed behind me. No one had, I could tell. He was the kind of man who walked into the wrong place on purpose, just to see how far he could push it. The orchestra cut off sharply, and silence fell. My stomach tightened. The ceremony was beginning. The Omegas lined up in pairs along the circle, etched into the marble floor. A faint golden glow shimmered around the runes, old magic pulsing to life. My skin prickled as my instincts stirred. The crowd held its breath. I stepped forward, shoulders square, jaw locked. My role was simple: walk the circle, choose the Omega my family had pre-selected, and mark them with the bond. The magic would seal it. Irreversible unless the Omega renounced me. It was supposed to be foolproof. Supposed to be. I inhaled, letting the scent of polished marble, roses, and faint magic fill my lungs. But then, something else cut through the air. Sharp, spicy, alive. My instincts jolted so violently I nearly stumbled. I froze, pulse pounding. My gaze flicked, not to the line of poised Omegas, but across the room. The bartender, sequined shirt. He had just downed another drink and was wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His laughter rolled through the hall like a spark in dry hay. And God's help me, my beast inside reacted instantly. No, 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 no. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breath, but the golden circle flared brighter as my instincts surged ahead of me. I stepped forward too fast, too uncontrolled. Whispers rippled across the room. The Omegas looked at me with painted smiles, waiting for their moment. But my beast had already chosen. I crossed the circle. My vision tunneled. The scent of him, the chaotic pull. It yanked me like a leash. I wasn't moving toward Lady Seraphina, the daughter of House Velmont, who had been carefully dressed and presented to me like a prize. I was moving toward the bar. No, wait, I muttered under my breath. But it was too late. The magic responded to instinct, not reason. The bartender turned at the last moment, glass in hand, eyes widening as I closed the distance. He looked me up and down, smirked, and then his expression shifted into sheer confusion. Before I could stop it, the bond flared. My hand brushed against his arm. The golden circle erupted in light, engulfing us both. A surge of fire shot through my veins. The air crackled, and the orchestra gasped in unison. The bond sealed. Silence crashed over the ballroom. Hundreds of eyes bore into me, into us. The bartender blinked. Then he looked down at my hand still on his arm, then back up at me. His lips parted. "Dude," he said, voice rough and incredulous. "Did you seriously just bite me with your magic? Are you sure you didn't mix me up with someone else?" The gasp of the crowd was deafening. My chest tightened as realization sank in. I had just marked the wrong Omega, and not just the wrong one. Someone who wasn't even supposed to be here. A drunk bartender in a sequined shirt. The ballroom emptied in a frenzy of whispers and horrified gasps, and before I could even process what had just happened, I was being dragged into a smaller chamber off the main hall. The carved oak doors slammed shut behind me, sealing out the noise but trapping me in something worse. My parents, half a dozen elders from the council, and the man I had just unintentionally bonded with. The chamber smelled of incense and age, heavy with velvet drapes and the weight of judgment. It was the kind of room where family legacies were discussed and verdicts handed down. Tonight, apparently, I was the crime. My father stood stiffly, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. His jaw was clenched so tightly I thought it might shatter. Beside him, my mother's expression was the perfect mask of aristocratic fury. Cold, controlled, but sharp enough to cut glass. "You've disgraced us," she said finally, voice like ice cracking over a lake. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. What could I say? That my instincts had betrayed me? That centuries of tradition meant nothing in the face of one drunk man's scent? None of it would make sense to them. Across the room, sprawled lazily in a gilded chair as if it were his bar stool, sat the culprit. The bartender, my so-called mate. He looked different now, the alcohol wearing off enough to sharpen his gaze. His sequined shirt still glared against the somber backdrop, but his grin had shifted from reckless joy to razor-edged amusement. He raised his glass. Where had he gotten more liquor? And smirked. "Well," he drawled, "congratulations to us. I always wanted to be the centerpiece of a scandal. Didn't know it came with free jewelry." He wiggled his wrist where faint golden marks shimmered, the residue of the bond. "Guess I'm your newest accessory, and trust me, I'm expensive." A horrified murmur rippled through the elders. Silence. One of them barked. Lord Valen, a relic of the council with a voice like a cracked bell. "This mockery cannot stand. The bond must be annulled at once." "Impossible," another elder hissed. "The circle sealed. Only the Omega can renounce the mark, and even then—" My father cut him off, eyes locked on me. "You will fix this. Do whatever it takes. This family will not be tethered to that." His gaze flicked toward the bartender like he was a stray mutt who'd wandered into a banquet. "That?" The bartender, Jamie, I thought I'd heard someone call him, arched a brow. Ouch. And here I thought I was charming. I pinched the bridge of my nose, willing myself not to explode. The more I tried to control the situation, the more it slipped out of my grasp. My beast inside me was pacing, restless, wholly uninterested in noble outrage. It had found what it wanted, and no amount of logic would sway it. "I didn't choose this," I muttered. "You didn't stop it either," my mother snapped. "Do you realize the damage this will do? The Velmonts will withdraw their alliance. The press will tear you apart. Our name was already a cage," I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was thick, scandalized. My father's eyes narrowed, promising a reckoning later. Meanwhile, Jamie looked delighted. "Oh, I like him when he talks back." "Didn't know you had a rebellious streak, Mr. Perfect Alpha." He leaned forward, smirking. "So, tell me, am I supposed to start ironing your pants now? Or is there a handbook for this whole mate thing?" "Enough," one of the councilmen roared, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "The Omega must renounce him. That is the only way." Jamie blinked, then laughed, a rich, unbothered sound. "Renounce him? And miss the chance to watch all of you choke on your pearls every time I open my mouth? Not a chance." The elders erupted into chaos. My mother pressed her fingers to her temples, as though warding off a headache of historic proportions. My father's fists clenched at his sides. And me? I stood there, caught between panic and the strangest flicker of relief. Because even as my rational mind screamed that this was disaster, the beast in me hummed contentedly. It didn't care about alliances or reputations. It cared about the bond, about him. I hated that I understood it. Jamie's gaze found mine. His grin softened for a moment, turning sly instead of mocking. You're panicking in there, aren't you? Can see it in your eyes. Don't worry. If anyone asks, I'll say you begged me to come. Makes for a better story. I exhaled sharply. You think this is funny? Oh, it's hilarious. He raised his glass in a toast. To accidental soulmates. The elders sputtered in outrage. I ignored them. My entire body felt taut, stretched between the weight of duty and the magnetic pull of fate I'd never asked for. You're insufferable, I muttered. Jamie grinned wider. Takes one to know one. You, my friend, are a dried-up aristocrat with dictator vibes. But hey. He leaned back, cocky as ever. At least you look good in a suit. My jaw tightened. Believe me, I'd undo this if I could. But my beast... I hesitated, the words tasting like iron. My beast has already claimed you. For once, Jamie didn't joke. He studied me in silence, and the smirk faded into something unreadable. And in that moment I realized just how deep into this mess I really was. The apartments they gave us were too big, too ornate, and far too cold. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and every wall was paneled with polished wood carved in floral patterns. The bed was king-sized, the sofas upholstered in silk, the rugs thick enough to swallow your feet. It was the kind of place meant to impress visitors, not to live in. I dropped my jacket onto the back of a chair, jaw tight. Every step I took echoed in the cavernous rooms, a constant reminder of the silence. It was suffocating, like being locked inside a jewel box. Jamie, on the other hand, looked delighted. Sweet digs, he said, kicking off his shoes the second we walked in. He patted across the marble floor in his socks, then decided even that was too much effort and stripped them off too. Barefoot, he wandered the suite like he owned it. Shame there's no minibar. That's a design flaw. I pinched the bridge of my nose. This isn't a hotel. Could have fooled me. The towels are fluffier than anything I've ever stolen. I ignored him, or tried to. It wasn't easy. Not with the bond humming beneath my skin like a taut string. I could feel him. Not just hear or see him, but feel him. The sharp spark of his amusement, the lazy stretch of his relaxation. His moods brushed against me in waves, impossible to block. The worst part? It was contagious. He rummaged through a cabinet, whistling off-key. Then he found the sound system and before I could stop him, pressed a button. Loud music burst through the speakers, something fast with too much bass. I flinched. Turn that off. Why? He swayed a little to the beat, grinning. This place needs life. You'd prefer to sulk in complete silence? That sounds fun. Because I said so, I snapped. Jamie turned, one eyebrow arched. Oh, because you said so. Right. Forgot you're the big bad alpha. He flicked the volume down a notch, but didn't stop the music. So if you're the alpha, what does that make me? A prize? The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment I didn't answer. His tone was teasing, but underneath there was something sharp. A dare. I met his gaze. More like a punishment. He let out a bark of laughter. Wow. Romantic. Do you rehearse these lines, or do they just pop into your head? I turned away, annoyed at myself for taking the bait. He was impossible. Loud, messy, disrespectful. He was everything I'd spent years avoiding. And yet, my beast inside stirred, restless and curious, every time he smiled. It wanted to move closer when he laughed. It wanted to soothe when he frowned. I hated it. Jamie flopped onto the sofa, sprawling like a cat, arms spread wide. You know, for a guy stuck with me, you're awfully tense. You'll get wrinkles. I don't get wrinkles, I muttered. Sure. Keep telling yourself that. He reached for a bowl of fruit left on the coffee table and bit into an apple with a crunch. His satisfaction rippled through me, bright and distracting. I scowled. "Stop projecting," I said. He froze mid-bite. "Wait, you can feel that?" I hesitated. "Yes." Jamie's grin widened, like he'd just discovered a new toy. "Oh, this is going to be fun." I groaned. For the next hour, he tested it. He cranked the music back up, just to see if my irritation would spike. It did. He wandered barefoot into the kitchen, humming cheerfully, and I felt the warm buzz of his contentment until my own shoulders loosened despite myself. Then he deliberately frowned at the soup the staff had left us, and I found my chest tightening, as though the disappointment were my own. "Fascinating," he said, poking the bowl with his spoon. "You're like my emotional mirror. What happens if I—" He exaggerated a laugh, loud and obnoxious. I clenched my fists. "Stop. Playing, or what? You'll glare at me harder?" He leaned back, smug. "This is a two-way street, isn't it? Bet you hate that." I did, more than I wanted to admit. But then, he cracked another joke. Something about the chandelier looking like it might collapse and crush me before he ever got the chance. It was absurd, delivered with such dry timing, that the laugh slipped out of me before I could strangle it. A real laugh. It startled me as much as him. I hadn't laughed, really laughed, in years. Jamie froze, apple halfway to his mouth. Then a slow grin spread across his face. Well. Look at that. Mr. Dictator can laugh. I tried to school my features back into neutrality, but the damage was done. The bond hummed, warm and alive between us, and I realized, with reluctant horror, that this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee, not the bitter, burnt kind that staff usually delivered in silver pots, but fresh, rich, and suspiciously good. I blinked against the sunlight spilling through the enormous windows, and found Jamie leaning against the doorway, holding a tray. On it, 2 mugs, a stack of toast, and a newspaper folded neatly in half. "Good morning, sunshine," he said with a smile so sweet it made my teeth ache. I sat up slowly, narrowing my eyes. "What are you doing?" "Being a perfect mate, obviously." He set the tray down on the low table by the bed. "Coffee, toast, and today's scandals." I circled the parts where they called you a disgrace. I groaned. Jamie grinned wider, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "You should be thanking me. I'm making this whole thing look legitimate. Imagine the headlines. Alpha and Omega settle into domestic bliss. Everyone swoons, family reputation salvaged. You're welcome." My beast purred at the offering, pleased with the gesture. I, however, felt only a creeping sense of dread. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "Want? From you?" He put a hand over his heart, feigning shock. "Nothing at all. This is purely altruistic." I didn't buy it, for a second. Jamie's little act didn't stop with coffee. By midday he had taken to fluffing the pillows on the sofa, humming cheerfully while he arranged them. He answered the door when staff arrived with lunch, smiling as though he belonged here. He even placed a napkin in my lap with exaggerated care. "Stop," I muttered. "Stop what?" "Caring." He fluttered his lashes. "You wound me." His antics were ridiculous. Yet, annoyingly, the bond thrummed with contentment every time he leaned closer, every time he laughed at his own jokes. My beast stretched inside me like a cat in the sun. It was infuriating. By the 3rd day of his performance, I'd had enough. I found him in the kitchen, humming again as he poured more coffee. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. He looked up, eyes wide with mock innocence. "Doing what?" "Playing house." The corner of his mouth twitched. For once, he didn't immediately fire back. Instead, he shrugged, sliding the mug toward me. "Maybe I'm just good at adapting." I didn't push, but I watched him carefully. His grin was still there, sharp and cocky, but behind it, something else. Something quieter. "I'll take everything I can from this stupid bond," his thoughts seemed to echo, though he never said them aloud. "If I have to be stuck here, I might as well make it worth my while." And yet, in the quiet moments when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him staring at me. Not with mockery, not with irritation, but with something he quickly hid behind another smirk. That night, we sat opposite each other on the sofa. The fire in the marble hearth crackled, painting the room in warm light. For once, Jamie wasn't talking. He leaned back, legs stretched out, eyes half closed. The silence stretched between us. I should have been relieved. Instead, I found myself listening for his breathing, feeling the bond's steady pulse as it carried his calm into me. It was soothing. Against my better judgment, the corners of my mouth twitched. Jamie cracked one eye open and caught me. "What's that?" he asked, feigning suspicion. "Are you smiling?" "I am not," I said quickly. "You are, I knew it." His grin spread, triumphant. Then he laughed, a low, genuine sound that vibrated through the bond and made my chest warm. And for the first time since this farce began, Jamie's own thoughts betrayed him. What if I actually like his laugh? The idea startled him so much he nearly dropped his mug. He covered it with another joke, of course, but I felt the flicker of truth beneath the words, and I couldn't decide which of us was in more trouble. Him, for thinking it, or me, for wanting him to. The car rolled up the gravel drive like a pen scratching a signature I didn't want to sign. The Von Aster manor rose out of the winter garden, all limestone and symmetry, every window a watching eye. Even the hedges stood at attention, trimmed into obedient boxes, as if my parents could topiary the world into submission. Inside, the air was chill despite the roaring fireplaces. Marble, oil portraits, a runner that swallowed footsteps. This house had been engineered to make you feel small and well-behaved. I'd grown up learning exactly which rooms to sit straight in, and which opinions not to have. Jamie took one look at the entry hall and whistled. So this is where joy comes to die. He had dressed to provoke, black trousers painted on, a silk shirt the color of ripe cherries, with half the buttons criminally absent, a necklace that winked when he moved. Barely there cologne. Bare feet would have been the only thing ruder, and I suspected he'd considered it. I should have told him to tone it down. I didn't. Maybe because some petty, exhausted part of me wanted the house to flinch. The butler's mouth did a precise little spasm when he saw Jamie. "Sir," he turned to me, recovering. "Your parents await in the blue salon." Of course they did. The blue salon, my mother's favorite for difficult conversations. It had a view of the old yew maze, and you could see yourself reflected in the window glass while you disappointed her. We crossed the parquet like contestants walking to a judging panel. My beast paced under my skin, irritated by the house, surprisingly calm around the man at my shoulder. The doors opened on quiet. My father stood by the mantel, posture carved from oak. My mother sat on the settee, hands folded like a weapon. 3 council elders occupied wingbacks as if auditioning for a portrait. "Nicholas," my mother said. The temperature dropped another degree. "Mother, father." I nodded at the elders. "Lords." No one bowed back. Their eyes shifted to Jamie, and the room underwent a collective aneurysm. My father's jaw clicked. "Shoes," he said, as if the word were a slur. Jamie smiled like a slow knife. I brought attitude instead. 2 for 1. "Enough," my mother said softly, which was how she pronounced guillotine. "Nicholas, send him out. This is a family matter." "Tempting," Jamie murmured. "But I'd hate to miss my own trial. I should have insisted he leave. I didn't. He stays." A small, mean satisfaction flared when one elder actually flinched. "Very well," my mother said. "Then we will be direct. You will end this farce before it calcifies. The Velmont alliance is already strained to breaking. There is a window, brief, while public memory is still malleable. Renounce him. Repair what you broke." I kept my face still. "The bond cannot be ended by me. The Omega can be persuaded," an elder said. He laced his fingers together. The sound of old rings tapping was a threat. "Compensated. Our council has options." Jamie leaned his hip against a console table, pretending to admire a vase that had survived 3 revolutions. "Wow, are we negotiating my resale value? Should I spin? I'm prettier from the left." "Silence," my father snapped. "Father," I said. He looked at me. We had the same eyes. His were simply older, bleached by duty. You have one job, he said softly. Protect this family. You do not throw our house into the ditch because your instincts misfired at a bar. At a bar, as if fate could be housebroken. My beast flexed, ready to bare its teeth. I forced my voice level. I did not intend it. No, my mother said. But you will correct it. If you have to drag him to the altar of renunciation, you will. I felt Jamie watch me, bright and still, the way he watched a drink go flat. He'd expected the fight. He hadn't expected my silence. What? My father asked. Do you owe him, Nicholas? He is a mistake. You owe your name. Something inside me, a rusted hinge, gave way. In the quiet that followed, my answer sounded like a statement I should have made years ago. He's mine. The room didn't breathe. Even the fire held its crackle. My mother's mouth thinned. Possessive grammar will not. He's mine, I said again, steadier. Not a snarl, not a claim made for sport, but a line drawn. I will not parade him as a transaction. I will not drag him anywhere he does not choose to go. You wanted an alpha. Here I am. My father took one step toward me. And the cost? Your house? Your alliances? Your future? Perhaps, I said, my future is not an invoice you get to itemize. Boy, one elder hissed. I'm 33, I said, and for the first time the number felt like a weapon, not a weight. And I am done being a signature stamped under decisions made for me. The silence cracked. My mother rose. Every inch the general. We will discuss this without an audience. Her gaze cut to Jamie. You will remove yourself. Jamie lifted his hands in mock surrender, but he didn't move. I felt the bond thrumming under my skin, a warm wire tightening. He was amused, yes, but there was a new thread in it, thin and astonished. I'll go, he said lightly, and started for the door. My beast snarled before my mouth could. Jamie, he glanced back. You do not owe them your exit, I said. You are here because I asked you to be. If you want to stay, stay. He blinked. For once the smirk didn't arrive on cue. Copy that. He returned to his post by the console table, less like a spectacle now and more like a line mate. The council's displeasure swelled like storm pressure. Then hear this, the oldest said. If the Omega refuses to renounce, we will censure you both. Your privileges will be suspended. The Velmont betrothal will be offered to your cousin. You will be cut out of decisions until you remember who you are. Who I am, I said quietly, is the man who chooses. You've been warning me about that my whole life. Consider me warned. My mother's eyes. Steel, then something gentler for a flicker. Nicholas. It wasn't a title. It was my name the way she used to say it when I scraped my knees. Then the steel reassembled. You will regret this. Perhaps, I said. But if I regret it, it will be mine to regret. The elders rose like thunderheads. The meeting was over without being dismissed. My father turned away, worse than a strike. My mother didn't look at me when she told the butler to show us out. We left the blue salon with the smell of old roses in our throats. Down the corridor, away from the portraits that judged us with inherited eyes, Jamie finally spoke, voice low so it wouldn't bounce. You know, I was ready to make a scene. Throw something antique, maybe myself. But you did that without me. It was overdue, I said. We stopped beside the window that overlooked the yew-maze. Our reflections stood together in the glass, the house behind us like a ghost. You didn't have to say that, he said. The he's mine part. You could have smoothed it, wheeled me out like a prop, let them think you're working on it. Would have been smarter. Probably, I said. I am not always smart. He laughed once, disbelieving. The bond pulsed warm against my ribs, then warmer still. His mask slid, not all the way, just enough to show a flash of something raw and young and surprised. I'm not a prize, you know, he said. I know, I said. You're a person. He squinted at me, suspicious of sincerity. Careful. Sounds like respect. I'm practicing. The hall was cold, but the air between us wasn't. He swayed closer on instinct, then caught himself, as if remembering we were in enemy territory. I had the sudden, indecent urge to take his hand. Ridiculous for a man who'd never been allowed to hold anything without permission. Instead, I said, "We should go." "Yeah." Cleared his throat. "Before I steal a candlestick out of spite." We walked back through the house that had tried to shrink me into a title. It didn't look smaller, but it looked less infinite. The gravel outside still grated, but the car felt like a door, not a cage. Halfway down the steps, Jamie bumped his shoulder against mine. "Not hard. Not an accident. For the record," he said, staring straight ahead. "That was the hottest thing you've ever said." "What was?" "He's mine." His mouth tilted. "Don't let it go to your head, dictator." "Duly noted." He exhaled, something like a laugh, and I felt it like sunlight in the bond. The distance between us didn't vanish, but it shortened. Not a bridge yet. Something you could jump if you wanted. Behind us, the house kept being a house. In front of us, the road kept being a road. Between those two truths, something fragile and stubborn began to trust. The apartment felt different at night. The chandeliers were dimmed, the curtains drawn, the fire in the hearth casting a soft, restless glow across the room. It was the first time since the ball that silence didn't feel like judgment. It felt expectant. Jamie was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, rummaging through the groceries delivered by staff earlier. "So," he called, "do aristocrats even eat, or do you just breathe powdered etiquette and sip disdain for dinner?" I leaned against the counter, watching him inspect a jar of tomato sauce like it might explode. "We eat," I said dryly. "Some of us even chew." He shot me a grin over his shoulder. "Well, congratulations. Tonight you're having spaghetti. Courtesy of Chef Jamie, master of noodles and chaos." I should have stopped him. I didn't. There was something disarming about watching him barefoot on marble floors, hair falling into his eyes as he attacked the kitchen like it owed him money. We chopped, stirred, argued over how much salt belonged in the pot. I wasn't used to this kind of domestic scene. It felt strange, almost dangerous. But it was also grounding, until the sauce disaster. Jamie reached for the pot at the same time I did. Our elbows bumped, and in the shuffle the spoon flipped, splattering red across my shirt front. I froze. He froze. Then he burst out laughing. "Oh gods," he wheezed, clutching the counter. "Look at you. The mighty Von Aster heir, defeated by marinara." I glared, but the absurdity cracked something in me. A laugh slipped out, reluctant at first, then louder. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed in my parents' house. In any house. "Don't just stand there," I said, still chuckling. "You're the one who ruined dinner." "Correction," Jamie said, wiping tears from his eyes. "We ruined dinner. Bonded for life, remember? Teamwork." We managed to salvage the meal, though the pasta came out slightly overcooked. Sitting across from him at the small dining table, plates steaming between us, I realized it didn't matter. The food was edible. The company was unexpectedly good. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jamie set his fork down. His expression softened, the grin fading into something quieter. "You know," he said, "I've always been the guy in the background, the one fetching drinks, mopping up messes, running errands no one else wanted. People don't look at me and think, future mate material. They think, he'll do until someone better shows up." The bond shivered with his honesty. My chest tightened. "You play it off with jokes," I said slowly. "But it's not a joke to you." He shrugged, gaze fixed on his plate. "Doesn't matter. You get used to it. Be loud, be funny, take what you can. No one expects you to stay, so you don't." I thought of the counsel, of my father's voice like iron, my mother's eyes like frost. "I've never had that freedom," I admitted. "Since I could walk, I was told who I would be, which alliances mattered, which traditions I couldn't question. I was never supposed to choose, only obey." Jamie looked up. Our eyes met across the table, and for a heartbeat the sarcasm, the masks, all of it fell away. "So we're both trapped," he said softly. "Yes." My voice was rougher than I meant it to be. "Just in different cages." The fire popped. The bond hummed warm, pulling our emotions together in a tangle of exhaustion. Defiance, and something tender I didn't want to name yet. Jamie leaned back in his chair, studying me. Funny, I thought you were a dictator with great hair. Turns out you're just human. And you, I said, surprising myself, are more than a bartender in a sequined shirt. He snorted. Don't let that get around. I have a reputation to protect. After dinner, we cleaned up together. It was clumsy. He dropped a plate. I burned my fingers on the pan. But it was easy. Easier than anything else had been in weeks. Later, on the sofa, exhaustion settled over us. The fire burned low. I stretched out, intending to rest for a moment, and Jamie collapsed onto the cushions beside me with a groan. Don't get used to this, he muttered, eyes already half closed. I snore. I doubt you could surprise me anymore, I said, though my voice softened. His breathing evened out quickly. The bond thrummed, steady and warm, carrying his drowsy comfort straight into me. Without thinking, I let my eyes close too. And for the first time since the ceremony, sleep came without tension. Two strangers, caught in the same net, drifting side by side, no claws unsheathed. The council chamber smelled like dust and iron. High-arched ceilings, heavy curtains, and a circular table polished to a mirror sheen, all designed to remind anyone who entered that power here was older than they were, older even than reason. I'd grown up in this room, watching decrees shaped and lives altered. Tonight, mine was on the chopping block. Jamie whistled under his breath as we walked in, low and irreverent. Nice decor, very soul-crushing authority chic. The sound echoed in the chamber like a slap. The elders did not smile. Silence. Lord Valen snapped. His white hair gleamed like bone in the lamplight. This is no tavern, Omega. Show respect. Jamie raised his brows, then exaggerated a bow. Respect. Got it. Consider me overflowing with it. I resisted the urge to rub my temples. My beast stirred uneasily, half agitated, half amused. We took our places at the center of the chamber. The circle inscribed on the floor glowed faintly, golden lines reminding us why we were here. The bond between us thrummed beneath my skin, alive and undeniable. Lord Valen's voice cut the air. Nick Von Aster, you have sullied the honor of your house. You have jeopardized alliances painstakingly built. The bond you formed with this interloper is an abomination. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. It must be undone, another elder said. And as tradition dictates, only the Omega may renounce it. Therefore, he fixed Jamie with a look of cold authority, you will speak the words. Now, all eyes turned to him. Jamie leaned casually against the back of his chair, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. His shirt tonight was a crime against subtlety, gold embroidery, half-tucked, collar gaping. He looked like temptation wandered into a funeral. I braced myself. He was going to do it. Of course he was. Renounce the bond, end the scandal, and walk away with whatever compensation the council had already planned. That had been his game from the start. Play the part, milk the chaos, leave untouched. The silence stretched. Finally, Jamie spoke. So let me get this straight. If I say the words poof, this connection, this shiny little accident, is gone. No more awkward dinners. No more dictator in a suit breathing down my neck. A murmur of approval circled the table. Correct, one elder said sharply. Speak, and free yourself. Do it now. Jamie tapped his chin, eyes flicking toward me for just a heartbeat. The bond flared warm, confusing, before he looked back at the council. No, he said. The word dropped like a stone into a still pond. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then the chamber erupted. Impossible. He mocks us. Speak again. Renounce him properly. But Jamie only shrugged, leaning back in his chair. Sorry, gentlemen. Not happening. My stomach lurched. I had been prepared for anger, for shame, even for relief. I hadn't prepared for this. You would bind yourself willingly? Lord Valen demanded, eyes blazing. To him? To this house? Do you have any idea what you're rejecting? Oh, I do, Jamie said, his tone sharp with humor that was only half a shield. I'm rejecting being treated like a pawn on your marble chessboard. I'm rejecting being handed a script I never auditioned for. So, thanks. But no thanks. Gasps rippled like wind through dry leaves. My beast roared approval, pacing inside me, thrilled at his defiance. But my human self, I was rattled, stunned. I caught Jamie's eye. He smirked, but it didn't reach all the way. There was something else in his gaze, something steadier, less performative. The council tried again. Threats, promises, warnings of disgrace. Jamie endured them all with infuriating calm, flicking his nails as though their outrage were background noise. At last, Lord Valen slammed a hand against the table. So be it. If the Omega refuses to free himself, then you both will live with the consequences. You will be cut off, ostracized. Your names will rot in the archives as a cautionary tale. Jamie stretched lazily. Rot's a good look on me. Very avant-garde. The meeting adjourned in chaos, the elders storming out, muttering curses under their breath. My parents did not speak to me as they left. They didn't have to. Their silence weighed heavier than words. When the doors finally shut and the echoes faded, the chamber felt almost human again. I turned to Jamie, searching his face for the punchline. Why? I asked quietly. His grin tilted, cocky as ever. What? Disappointed? Thought I'd ditch you? I thought you wanted out. I did, he admitted, gaze dropping for once. Then he met my eyes, the smirk faltering. But somewhere between your uptight speeches and your laugh, yes, you do laugh, I realize maybe I don't want out. Not yet. He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his trousers. Make no mistake, dictator. I came here to play a game. But somewhere along the line, he trailed off, shaking his head. I watched him head for the door, sunlight from the tall windows catching in his hair. I came here to play. His thoughts echoed down the bond, unguarded for once. But now I'm playing against myself, and I knew we were both already losing, or maybe, terrifyingly, already winning. The night air was colder than I expected. After the suffocating weight of the council chamber, even the sharp bite of winter on my skin felt like freedom. The manor loomed behind us, its tall windows glowing faintly in the dark, a mausoleum of rules and expectations. Jamie shoved his hands into his pockets as we walked down the empty street. His sequined shirt caught the faint light from the gas lamps, throwing fractured colors against the pavement. For once, he wasn't talking. The silence between us was strange, quiet, but not hostile. I glanced at him, waiting for the inevitable jab, the sharp joke he'd use to paper over the weight of what had just happened. But he only sighed and kicked a loose stone across the road. You're thinking too loud, he muttered. Am I? Yeah. He shot me a sideways look. It's like your whole face is yelling. What did he just do? I didn't deny it. You surprised me. That's new? I've been surprising you since the chandelier incident. That was less a surprise and more a hazard, I said dryly. Finally he grinned, the familiar mischief sliding back into place. So, now that I've doomed us to eternal infamy, tell me, am I officially your biggest mistake? I stopped walking. The street was quiet around us, lined with shuttered shops and darkened townhouses. My breath came out in white puffs. He waited, half smirk on his lips. But there was something in his eyes, something that wasn't asking for a joke. I stepped closer. No, I said. Not my mistake. His brows lifted. My only luck, I finished, voice steady. The smirk faltered. His mouth parted just slightly, the glib answer stalling on his tongue. The bond between us pulsed, warm and insistent, carrying his shock, his wary hope, and something that felt dangerously like longing. That's... He laughed once, short and breathless. That's a hell of a line. Bet you practiced it in the mirror. I shook my head. I don't practice truths. For a moment we just stood there, the silence stretching, the city's noises distant and muffled. His grin wavered, softened into something more fragile. You know, he said finally, voice low. I didn't plan for this. At first I thought I'd play the part, milk the drama, grab whatever perks I could before cutting loose. Easy game. But then... He exhaled, shaking his head. Then you laughed. And it screwed everything up. I almost smiled. You don't regret it? Regret? He considered. I regret the spaghetti disaster. But this? He gestured between us, the faint shimmer of the bond threading like invisible light. Not yet. We started walking again, slower this time. Our shoulders brushed once, twice, until neither of us bothered to move away. Do you think it gets easier from here? I asked quietly. Jamie snorted. Absolutely not. Your family hates me. The council thinks we're cursed. And half the city's gossip rags are probably already calling me Sequin's MC Scandal. Despite myself, I laughed. That sounds accurate. But, he added, glancing at me with a grin that was all teeth and light, at least it'll be interesting. The bond thrummed in agreement. We reached the corner where the lamplight flickered. And for a moment I thought he'd pull away, retreat back into sarcasm. But instead, Jamie stopped. He turned, studying me with that same unnerving honesty he usually hid under jokes. You don't look like a dictator right now, he said. What do I look like? He tilted his head, like a man trying to figure out how to kiss someone without screwing it up. Heat crept up my neck. You're insufferable. Yeah, he said softly, but you like it. And before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in. The kiss wasn't dramatic, wasn't perfect. It was tentative, awkward at first, then warm. His lips tasted faintly of coffee and trouble. My beast sighed in contentment, and my human self wasn't far behind. When we finally broke apart, he chuckled. Well, that was less of a disaster than spaghetti. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't hide the smile tugging at my mouth. He stretched his arms over his head, then hooked one around my shoulders with a casualness that didn't fool either of us. So, he said, what now? We ride off into the night, scandal in our wake, pasta sauce stains as our legacy? Something like that, I said. We walked on, side by side, the street unfolding ahead like a path we'd chosen. Not one written for us. The bond glowed steady and warm, no longer feeling like chains, but like possibility. Behind us, the manor and its judgment faded into shadow. Ahead, the city lights blinked like stars within reach. And for the first time, the future didn't look like duty or disaster. It looked like us, messy, stubborn, improbable, but ours.